Well, good morning, Ekklesia. This is Ivan Gonzalez, who I am going to be hosting this week's Ekklesia Unscripted for Tim Hertz. And I just wanted to introduce you to our topic. Essentially, I'm going to be interviewing a few guys this week just to kind of get their understanding of where they are as it relates to what the Ecclesia is, how it relates to the kingdom of God here on earth, and what does it mean to be a kingdom citizen. So today, my first guest is going to be Kelvin out of the West Coast, and I'm really excited about this conversation and hope and pray that you will glean from it and also be challenged from it, and that it would drive you closer to what Jesus wants you to do here on the earth. Well, good morning, Ekklesia. It's so good to be on this morning. I'm standing in for Tim Kurtz, who's taking some time off with his wonderful wife, Carolyn, and he asked me to stand in for this week, so I'm excited to be here. I have invited a wonderful guest who I've starting to get to know more and more. We've never met physically, but we've been on a number of calls together about the gospel of the kingdom as it relates to how this conversation is unpacking across the globe. And his name is Kelvin Chambliss. Welcome, Kelvin. Good to see you this morning.
Good to be here, Ivan. Thank you. Thank you. I think it's great that Tim had you to do this while he was away, and just in the spirit of cooperation, you opened it up to so many of us. And so Thank you very much, Ivan.
Yeah, I think one of the beautiful things about this is that, that it's just not one voice speaking about what God is doing currently as it relates to the Ecclesia. I know God's used Tim in a significant way in the last 5 years to unpack what is the difference between church and Ecclesia. We've got other folks that are highly focused on what is the kingdom and the government of the kingdom and what's the authority in that kingdom and the law that dictates what goes on in the kingdom and what does it mean to be a kingdom citizen and how does that change culture. A number of great conversations that are happening across the globe. So this is just one of many, and God seems to have orchestrated our time to be together. So I look forward to our conversation this morning. So to get started, we want to talk about a little bit about what the Ecclesia is and how you see it in your sphere, Kelvin. So just tell us a little bit about where you're located and how you came to this understanding of the Ecclesia.
Brenda and I are located in the south central part of Los Angeles. And I think about Tim Kurtz, he's in the south central part of Michigan, right? And so I'm in south central Los Angeles. And so Brenda and I met in 1997. We got married in 1998. I came out to Los Angeles to do a series of services, we call services back then, revival meetings and things. And that's where I met Brenda. And that's a whole long story. I probably couldn't make it through it without kind of, getting emotional about it. But anyway, so Brenda and I are planted there in central Los Angeles. And our marriage has really been a very united impact on individuals, couples, and individuals, hurting individuals. And so it seems like those kind of needs gravitated around us. They somehow found their way around us, and we found ourselves in positions with our hearts reaching out to them, and God would give us grace to be there and to help and to love. And so when we bring in this issue of Ecclesia, I believe that the issue of being called out, God has a kingdom, as you know, and that kingdom agenda cannot be expressed in the earth except through people. And so the people who he expresses that through are called out to demonstrate, because the church system or the church institution, as it is, cannot do it. A pastor cannot be over a kingdom. He can be over his personal kingdom, but not the kingdom of God. And so, so Jesus has to be the king of that kingdom. And so we're called out to be citizens of that kingdom. And so we express the will of God, the authority of God, the regency of God, the power of God, the citizenship in the earth through the called out ones, of which we are a part and coming to know more and more.
Right. I think there's a significant distinction that needs to be made, that we are called to reflect the kingdom of heaven on the earth. We're not called to replace the kingdoms of the world
No.
with what people like, not to take over the kingdoms of this world, but we are to establish the kingdom of heaven on the earth. Can you talk about like the significance of that distinction? Like, why is
Yeah.
it that we aren't called to take over the kingdoms of the world, but we are called to establish the kingdom of God on the earth?
Yeah. It comes down to influence,
Yeah.
really influencing people and systems of this. We're not here to take over anything.
Yeah.
Ivan, I really see the clear picture of the kingdom in a tea bag. That's one of the real clear expressions
Hmm.
where the tea bag is packaged already
Yeah.
with what it's designed to do. You introduce it into the hot water, and then what is inside the tea bag expresses into the water, and it is no longer water. Now you have to call it tea.
Yeah.
It quietly influences
Yeah.
that water, and the longer it stays, the stronger it gets. So it's not about banging the drum. It's about, providing the king's will in the earth,
Yeah. It,
providing
it
his will in the
it brings those traditional images of being the salt of the earth and the
right.
light, right? It's not, it doesn't change what it's designed to do. It basically releases what it's designed to do in its environment, right?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I remember back in the church system, I was called to teach on what it means to be the salt of the earth, and I brought a piece of beef steak to the church, and I had three pieces. I had one that I had over salted, another one that was minimally salted, and another one that had no salt. And it was cooked, fully cooked. And so I passed it around and I asked people to tear a piece off and then taste it. And those that, of course, had the one that had the most salt on it, spit it out of their mouth, you know? So the image that I have as it relates to what it means to be the salt is, if we come in too much with too much salt, it's going to overpower the flavors of the meat, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I used to be that kind of Christian. I used to be the guy that would bring in. I'd come in hot. I'd come in with my theology, my understanding of what it means to be the church, and I'd go toe to toe with pastors about who was right and who was wrong. And I'd have my theology was right and you're wrong, and you worship on the wrong day, and you need to be worshiping on the right day, and you're going to go to hell because you don't worship on the right day.
Mm-hmm.
And I just didn't realize how religious I was.
Me too.
Can you talk about how you're different now because of the reality of the kingdom of the ecclesia as you were before?
Ivan, there reached a time in my life where I had people that were asking me very simple questions about what I was in.
Mm,
I found those things very offensive. There came questions to me that I could not answer. I
mm,
wanted to answer, but I couldn't answer.
mm,
And I found myself like things like, Kelvin, are you really free?
mm,
It's not an issue of freedom. It's an issue of doing what I need to do. I mean, bless God, this is about sacrifice,
mm, mm.
and it's no more I, but the Christ that lives in me,
Yeah.
So these kind of answers would come up. But deep down, there was a growing frustration that I could not answer these basic questions. And no, I wasn't free, but I was too proud to admit it. And so um,
What was that?
people
What
like
was
us.
that like? What do you feel was driving that? Like, what do they mean by "Are you free"? What do you think they meant by "Are you free"?
Well, inside of the church system that I was in, was I truly free inside? Was I free to express who God had called me to be? Was I free to express who He had ordained me to be?
Mm,
And I didn't even know what that was. And so, but it was a gnawing question inside. It's like, although I couldn't admit it to the one who was asking me the question, I had to be able to answer that question to myself.
so,
And it wasn't in the affirmative, it was in the negative. No, I was not free. No, I didn't know who I was. I knew what my last name was. I knew what my position in the church was, but I did not know who I was and what I was called to do in the earth. And so it annoyed me. It annoyed me to the place where I saw it, and I've tried to figure out where I can answer that question. Who am I? What am I called to do? And is there anything bigger than this religious box that I'm in? And I want to say this, that we have a lot of people who are very sincere in their faith,
mm,
but it doesn't mean that it's accurate. It doesn't mean that they're living out the true fulfilling and fulfillment of what God has called them to do and who own skin, I found out that the church structure that I was a part of made me a good actor. It was always about projecting. How did it look? Not the essence of it. So
Mm,
look the part. So look like you were happy, even if you weren't happy.
mm.
Smile before the camera. It's all about, and those kind of things really uh, brought even greater the truth of the fact that I was not satisfied or fulfilled over time.
Yeah, yeah. So one of the things that comes to my mind is this idea, a lot of religious circles, a lot of churches and denominations talk about be separate from the world, right? You're going to follow these ideas about what it means to be a Christian, and these are the rails that you need to operate within. But those rails are definitely separate from the world. So that's one characteristic, at least that I have in my mind as I think about
Mm.
my religious upbringing. Like distinguish yourself from the world. Don't get engaged with the world. Don't be a part of anything that represents the worldly secular system. So I was always focused on I'm going to be committed to the denomination that I'm part of. I'm going to share what my denomination has taught me with others that I run into. I'm going to try to evangelize people in that learning, right? And then I am now in a place where that idea of being separate from the world is like the wrong thing. Like that's not what God wants us to do. God wants us to be engaged in the world. He wants us to be influenced, like we were talking before, salt and light. Can you
Yeah.
talk about how you came out of that like closed off mentality to a place where now you're free to interact in different sectors?
The hunger became so strong in me, Ivan,
Mm,
that I started to realize that this would no longer work for me when I was in, and I had to come to grips with the fact that the people I was around couldn't take me to where I needed to be. And
mm,
they're precious people, good people, but I couldn't go further
mm,
than what they were able to teach me and what my exposure was. But there was still this driving hunger inside of me to know more as to what is out there and why am I here.
mm,
So man, I tell you, I had to come to grips with how messed up I was and how messed up, yeah, I had gotten inside of the system where my ears were closed
mm,
to truthful things about myself.
mm.
Truthful things like Kelvin, there's more for you. You're blind to some areas of this, and I found that offensive, and so I would try to push those kind of people away, but it did not change the truth. You
Yeah.
talk about salt and light, Ivan.
Mm,
There's no voice given to that salt and light. There's no voice,
mm,
only expression, right? And if you're too salty, you call it salt. And I was a blowtorch. I
mm.
wasn't a, I wasn't a light. I was a blowtorch. I just, I
burning
just,
burning people up with your doctrine.
I did so much damage, man. I thank God for his mercy. I
Mm.
didn't deserve to be within 10 feet of people, man, when
Wow.
I came out with the kind of zeal, but it was not according to knowledge,
Yeah. Yeah. That's
And so I'm so grateful for God's mercy and dealing with me. So you mature over time and you find out what is what is proper,
yeah.
what is not proper, the balance of salt. That salt is to complement the meal. It isn't to dominate the meal.
Yeah.
It's to
Yeah.
bring the flavor and the balance and the seasoning.
Yeah.
Even with light, you're not to we're to bring inside an illumination like the dawning of a new day. I
Mm.
never saw the sun come out just aggressively. Boom! It
Yeah.
goes immediately from dark to light. It's
Yeah.
gradual.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's gradual.
Yeah.
So I have less and less to prove now, Ivan, than
Yeah.
I've ever had in my own life. So
That's
I'm
definitely
enjoying this
that's
walk.
definitely freeing, right?
Yeah, I'm enjoying life now. I really am.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Can you talk about a significant marker as you were coming out of out of the system of the church? Like what was a marker for you? Can you remember what one or two significant things that happened or conversations that you had or a book that you read that really helped you transition may take the next step?
Hmm. I can't exactly what changed for me. Brenda and I went to a Benny Hinn meeting,
Mm,
okay, in Chicago. He was coming, and my mother had tickets. She didn't go, and I was wondering because my wife and I personally were not big fans
yeah,
of him.
yeah.
So we went there, and we ran into a gentleman to start talking about prophetic activation.
Mm,
It was like, so that's why we're here.
mm,
And so during this time of prophetic activation, my wife Brenda was kind of sharing what she saw and thought during this period with the woman next to me who I knew of
mm,
and had been in a similar denomination that I was in.
mm,
And Brenda told her words that had her crying profusely. And
mm,
when we saw the reactions, like, okay, in October of this year, we're going to be having a conference. So we went to that conference, met a gentleman who was teaching in that conference that we connected with the message of the kingdom. And it was so much of what was inside of us. Like he was saying things. We
mm,
were giving each other high fives and looking at each other like, is this real? You know, so that was like the step. It's like, Kelvin, there's a whole nother world out here that you've
mm,
never even seen. There's a side of God that you never even experienced. And so
mm,
we connected with this gentleman in Florida,
mm.
and he was moving to another part, the Midwest region, and of Illinois. Well, not in Illinois, I think it was in Arkansas. And so we connected there, man. And I tell you, our eyes were really open. So that was pivotal
Right.
in changing. And so
So,
then
so
I saw
can I can
this
I
work.
can I can I reflect back to you what I hear you saying? So you weren't really fans of Benny Hinn, but
No,
you decided to go to this conference, and God set you up to meet this person who is talking about prophetic activation. That was something that you were already involved in, and so it was affirming for the purpose that you went to the meeting. You felt like God had drawn you there, not so much to hear Benny, but to interact
no.
with this person, right? And then you go to
Yeah, we
another,
had no interest.
and then you go to
Uh,
another.
we call,
It's
we
almost
actually
like,
called it actually called it a concert. We went to a Benny Hinn concert. So we
okay,
were really kind of we weren't nice about it. We really weren't.
okay,
But it was the connections there, right? It was the connections there that
yeah,
we saw that was outside of us being there. Yeah.
yeah. And then the next place he takes you to another conference where they're talking about the kingdom, right?
Yeah.
And it was
Hmm.
almost like God already knew what your hunger was, so it set
Yeah.
you up to get an affirmation that you were headed in the right direction. You didn't know that until you showed up and you started hearing this word that started witnessing you with your spirit that, wait a minute, I've heard this before. This is what I've been thinking about. This is what I've been
Yeah.
praying about. This is what I've been reading the word for. And now
Hmm.
God is affirming that this is the right direction, right?
That's
So that's
it.
another marker. Can you talk about another one that helped you make the next step?
Well, from that, I began to see, because we moved from that place, that ministry or that place took us a little bit further than we were. But now I started meeting other people that there was a deeper insight and a deeper heart. This had more to do with heart and less to do with performing. So
Mm,
even though I was in a better context,
mm,
I wasn't in the space where my heart's cry was really being heard or felt or I was connecting with it. So there was something deeper and there was something more. Right now, Ivan, I feel that it's not because I was in a denomination where your gifting and your talent were very, very important.
mm,
That was the highlight.
mm.
Your character didn't have to be much, but you can, man, I tell you, if you can prophesy accurately, right, you can lay hands and people fall out, man, you got it going on. But
Yeah,
what about your character? All
yeah.
right. And so those were things that became important to me.
Mm,
I didn't want to be a hypocrite and I didn't want to accuse anybody else who was not, didn't have this desire. And I'm not a big talking to little U's. That's
yeah,
not me. I'm still learning about the kingdom and the Ecclesia even now. But my heart, man, can I be like a child at
mm,
62? Can I still learn? Can I be open? You
yeah,
know, can I still explore things that I have not known and not feel uncomfortable about it? Can I
yeah,
trust the collaboration and the lives that people brought around me to
mm,
make me better? Or do I repel or do I repel against that? Do I push back against that? And
yeah,
so, man, I've come to a place now, where the gloves are off, my
yeah,
heart is open,
yeah,
and I don't worry about being deceived
yeah,
because I believe that the purity of my heart will always protect me in any space.
yeah. Charles, I was talking to Charles a couple days ago, and he was
Oh
describing
man,
this idea that, when we have arrived to a place where we think that we've got it all figured out, beware, right? beware, because God is much more expansive. You know, the Bible says that his ways are not his ways, his thoughts are not our thoughts. His love goes way beyond what we can understand, right?
Mhm.
So I tell that I share this once in a while. I basically come to people and I say, I'm holding what I've learned with open hands. God can
Yeah,
God can take that out and put something else in,
beautiful.
and I just need to be prepared to continue to grow. And as I read the word, that God will reveal more and more, and as I talk to other brothers and sisters, that he will share through them new insight, new ways of understanding. And it's deep. The pool of God is so deep that we have to be careful that we like to organize things, right? We like to get them understandable in human terms, and when we share them with other people, we think that that's the way they're going to understand what who God is, what he wants for their lives, right?
Mhm.
But what we don't realize is that the understanding comes by a revelation that God gives us, right? You and I could talk about stuff and you could share something new with me, but until I get the revelation from God about what
Right.
that means and how it applies to my life, I'm not going to be able to do anything with it, right?
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
it's significant that as we take this journey forward, that there are many voices and many people who God is revealing himself to as it comes to the understanding of the ecclesia, as it comes to the understanding of the kingdom and what it means to be a kingdom citizen. In your context, Calvin, as you think about ecclesia and how it's represented where you are, can you talk a little bit about what it looks like locally, and then what it looks like at a little further regional level, and then a statewide level and globally? Can you talk a little bit about those four realms?
Well, where I consider my level of knowledge in all this, Ivan, is it's equivalent to half a thimble's worth taken out of the ocean. So how much more can I learn? All right. So, but I do know it begins with my own heart.
Yeah.
I can't get past the part that Jesus says, except you become as a child,
Mm.
you cannot see the kingdom.
Yeah. Yeah.
Except you can become like a child, you can't enter.
Yeah.
So I am open to being led as a child through this.
Mm.
I know my heart must be pure, not just my intention,
Yeah.
but my real understanding that I am under a king and
Mm.
my life now serves at the pleasure of this king.
Mm. Mm.
Okay.
Mm.
This isn't a democracy where I vote.
Yeah.
Okay. And so once that happens, my wife begins to see, wow, Kelvin's different. He really means what he says. He's really the kind of husband that expresses um, what he really means. And I'm telling you, your wife knows whether you're living right or not. She knows if
That's
you're
right.
true. You know
They,
what I'm saying?
they say
And if we,
you want to know what a man's about? Talk to his wife, right?
that's right. And so um, I'm just really grateful, really grateful. So Brenda and I had this conversation. She was saying, "Well, Kelvin, the ecclesia, what is that all about?" And so that's when I shared what I felt was the missing piece of God's authority that is in heaven. The prayer was, let your kingdom come, let your will be done on earth.
Mm.
And so the earthing part is where the ecclesia comes in, you
Mm.
know?
Mm.
And so once she saw the difference between the church institution and the need for a called out group that demonstrated something outside of the church system but became kingdom citizens,
Mm.
then we see that there's only one king, and the church institution could not help us ever express what the king desired.
Mm.
It's a completely different thing. So
Mm.
then we go there from there to our neighborhood. From there, I have learned and I'm learning that it starts with love,
Yeah.
loving people, man,
Yeah.
serving people, being there for them. Not, you know, if people smoke, if they crack open a beer or something like that, it's hey, wait a minute, I don't want that around me.
Mm. Mm.
It's letting people express where they are and who they are.
Yeah.
So if I can express something around them that would have them ask questions,
Yeah.
Kelvin, there's something a little different about you. I was visiting a cousin of mine who used to live in Los Angeles, and he was in a facility where something happened with his feet. I think they probably needed to be amputated, and so his wife at that time, who I had not had a lot of relationship with, picked me up. dropped me off. She said, "What church do you go to?"
Hmm.
And I understood what she meant. It wasn't about, because it was like, you express something different,
Hmm.
right? You express something a little different than what I see.
Hmm.
So that's what I wanted to be able to demonstrate. And it starts there with genuine love of people,
Yeah.
humility. You don't have all the answers, and service to them. That's what the kingdom looks like in the neighborhood, on a neighborhood level.
Yeah.
Ivan, I heard you talk about how you connect with the people in your city. That opened up a portal for me of
Hmm.
how I can connect with people in government and to see where the kingdom could fit and how it can express itself.
Right.
The authority of the King Jesus inside of those spaces. And so that's the part where I think I'm learning a little bit more about
Hmm.
how to integrate, how to listen, how to be a servant even at that level, and then make a difference being light and salt
Yeah.
in that area.
Yeah, I use the example, I've talked about this a couple of times, but in the area, right here in this home where we live, there's a little bit of a flooding issue that goes on in our neighborhood, and a lot of water comes into the area, and there's something called the county drainage board, which basically is responsible for helping the county determine like how they're going to deal with all the flooding that's going on in the area. And I took it upon myself to kind of find out when they have their meetings. I talked to the neighbors about, are you guys concerned about the flooding that's going? Oh yeah, we've been concerned for years, and we do stuff on our own. We dig out trenches and we do this. But have you guys ever gone down to the drainage board and talk with them about what's going on? And he said no. I said, would you like to go? Would you like to be part of this conversation? I feel like that's where we need to take our voice. And they said, well, you go and let us know what's going on and that kind of thing. So I've gone and
Mm-hmm.
I did some research online and I figured out who was on the board and then what's the nature of their meetings. Is there an opportunity for the public to speak? And so in every county meeting that I know of, that I'm aware of, I've got probably 6 or 7 that I pay attention to and keep track of when they're meeting. There is 2 minutes of public response time that if you go up and you sign up, you can share your issue, your idea with them. And so they give you the opportunity to do that. So I've found myself at board meetings, at county meetings, at city meetings, being part of the public comment section to be able to
Wow.
use my influence, not to bash them, not to call them out, not to challenge them, but to
Right,
use my
right.
influence from a kingdom perspective of what potential solutions are to some of the issues that they're facing. And it's been
Mm-hmm.
awesome. I mean, the number of people that have reached back out to me and said, hey, I really appreciate your comment there. I'd like to hear a little bit more about what you have to say. Come to another meeting. I invite you to be part of this
Mm-hmm.
conversation. It's been just phenomenal. Again, it's my early entree into how does the kingdom influence what's going on in this region where I'm at. When you think about those kinds of things, where does your mind go as it relates to Los Angeles? Where do you think you'll go next?
In that same arena, with that, like what you said, Ivan, it's important that I understand that God has called me as a citizen into his kingdom to express something very, very different. So how do I bring that? Not as a know-it-all, but as one who, and this is what I want to say about your example about what you shared. Ivan, one thing I found out about you as a person, you are interested.
Mm,
And if you're not interested, you won't be interesting,
yeah,
you
yeah.
know? And so you ask the questions,
Mm,
have we done this? Have we done it? And those were things that were, I got a barrage of questions when I was in the other system, and
mm,
I couldn't answer these things. I
mm,
really couldn't. And so it made me very uncomfortable. And so to be one who provokes to love and good works.
yeah, yeah.
So what it means is that I don't come in religiously, but I come in as a person that has hands and feet
Mm,
and will be able to share and to be able to listen to where there's help needed,
yeah,
and to cooperate and to lend my voice. And when they hear me speak, that it won't be Calvin. It'll be like, wow, I never thought about that. There's some wisdom to what this guy is saying.
mm,
You know,
mm, mm,
that to me is what expresses the kingdom, that we don't add to the chorus of negativity, but we're light. We show a pathway out. And so that's why I believe it's gonna be happening when I go back to, I'm in Illinois now. I'll be going back to Los Angeles at the beginning of the month.
yeah.
So I'm encouraged, even through your example, Ivan,
Mm.
about how to be curious inside of where can I help? How can I lend my strength and what I see to this
Yeah,
objective, this main objective?
yeah.
Beautiful.
It drives my kids crazy. This curiosity that I bring to just about every conversation and every place that I go, it drives my
Yeah,
wife crazy
yeah,
because
yeah.
I just start talking to people and I get curious about why are they doing what they're doing? What drove them to pick this as their
Right.
career? Why did they start this business?
Mm-hmm.
Did your media piece, only focus on this area? Like what drove you to only focus on
Mm-hmm.
this, reporting about this? And so my
Mm-hmm.
curiosity is it's insatiable, That's why I read a lot and I talk to people and just trying to discover what I'm listening for a perspective that reflects the love of God, the opportunity for people to
Yeah.
have a richer human experience, the opportunity for them to
Mm-hmm.
flourish and to live into what God
Yeah.
has wired them to be, right? And anytime I see where a
Mm-hmm.
person is like living less than what they could be living, I try to be an encourager to draw them out from that place where they're stuck to a place where they can move on and go,
Mm-hmm.
And so it's really fascinating to watch how God orchestrates it.
Yeah.
My current example is we've got a neighbor across the street. Both of them are 87 years old. And my other neighbor down the street, I just got to know, and we started talking kingdom and ecclesia and stuff. And he comes out of the Amish tradition. He's left the Amish
Mm.
tradition. And now he believes that as neighbors, we should help each other out at no cost. So
Wow.
I shared with him the opportunity to be part of our neighbors' challenges. They've got some construction stuff. And I asked him, I said, Marion, would you be willing to help me help them? He said, of course. What do you want to do? I said, well, let's go over there and talk to them. So he and I went over there and we struck up this conversation and he just talked to us about what was going on. And he's a jokester and he's been a successful businessman. He's probably a
Mm-hmm.
millionaire. And he's just talking to us about what he's done with his life. And then we start talking about what it looks like that we need to do in terms of the work. And then we told him, hey, by the way, this isn't going to cost you a dime. We're going to do this for free.
Wow.
First words out of his mouth is, Jesus Christ, I can't believe you, you guys are going to do this for free. And I turned to him, I said, that's the exact reason why we're going to do it for you for free. Jesus Christ.
That's right. Yeah. Oh man, that's wonderful, Ivan.
He just shook his head
Yeah.
and he goes like, I can't understand this. I can't understand this. You guys have got me speechless. And I says, that's probably for the first time, right? And he just laughed. So I use that
Oh
as
man.
an example of how God, I mean,
Yeah.
even me, I was at first, I wasn't, I was
Mm.
thinking, okay, a man is worth his wage, right? So I'd go over there and I gave him an estimate and I thought it was going to cost him like $1,600 to do all the work. And then my friend Marion, who I just met, challenges me by what it means to be a kingdom person by, in this particular case, saying, hey, we're not going to charge you a thing. And so I'm struggling with
Mm.
this idea that a man's labor is worth a wage. And
Mm.
then my friend brings this perspective that says, this is an investment into the possibility of this person who is, by the way, this person that we're going to do some work for, he's had his understanding of Jesus is that he had a friend who had a daughter who passed away early. And
Mm.
when I started sharing with him about why I do what I do, and I talked about Jesus, he said to me, I don't know about your Jesus, man, because I had a friend who had a daughter and she prayed like crazy for her daughter to be healed, and she wasn't healed. So I don't know about your Jesus. And he quickly changed the subject into something else. And I thought, there's some bitterness there. There's some challenges there about the reality of Jesus. So let me be careful. Give me wisdom, God, as I
Mhm.
interact with him.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So when we think about the kingdom and how we interact with our neighbors, how we interact with other people that we're connected to, it's the understanding that we need to listen well, right? To listen well to where people are, to not be pushed back by how they present themselves, but to understand that they come with all kinds of experiences that have made them be the people that they are.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
being the ecclesia it's about being the reality of the ecclesia, understanding that there's a conflict going on, right? The enemy's trying to influence people to reject God and what his kingdom represents and try to get them caught up in all kinds of systems that only lead to death, right? So our role is different. Like when you face those situations, what are some ways that you pray to get ready? What do you do to get ready to have these new conversations?
First of all, I have that I'm powerless.
Mm.
Really. Okay. You know what I'm saying? In and of myself. I could mess up a one-car funeral. All right. I mean, I just start there. I start there. And that, Father, if you want to impact these people, all right, how can I cooperate with you?
Yeah.
Not how you can cooperate with me.
Mm.
Because I don't want to win them. You're the influencer.
Yeah.
You give the increase. And so I start there in a very real way, man. I want to stay out of God's way long enough for him to use me.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, I want to slow down to the speed of God, as my friend says, you know,
Yeah.
and let my zeal be in order. I can keep my zeal, but let it be laced with wisdom,
Mm.
right? So I start there and with a real pure open heart, going with the confidence that God truly is the one who does it. And if I work with him and if I make myself available to him, he will show his glory.
Yeah.
And he will show his power inside of that moment. So if you're a person who wants to steal God's thunder, you'll be disappointed. It's impossible. You can't steal God's thunder.
That's right.
Cooperate with him, man. You know,
That's
and
right.
don't try to do too much salt. Don't
Yeah.
try to do too much salt. Blend in a way where it's flavorful. You're flavorful, and you complement. You
Yeah.
don't dominate. Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
why I start with a pure heart in that regard. I mean, really, truly,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah, that's awesome. That's awesome. This has been such a rich conversation, Kelvin. Thank you. Thank you so much for taking the time to be with us this morning. Tim, we want to say to you, thank you for being
Yeah.
so gracious to allow us to take up some of the time and to share with your public, your community, our
Mhm.
perspective on what it means to be the Ecclesia. You've been so gracious to us to be able to do that.
Man, I love Calvin's heart, his desire to be childlike as he discovers more and more of what it means to be a follower of Jesus. And what it is to live in the reality of that faith in God's everlasting kingdom. I look forward to our conversation so we can hear more about the new discoveries Calvin has made about the Ecclesia and his experience. Tomorrow, I'll be interviewing Charles Opillo from the African continent. He's been fleshing out what it means to be the Ekklesia for 10 years, and you don't want to miss this time together. Stay strong, study the Word, ask God to continue to lead you and challenge you to go where He leads.